Good morning, everyone. I will now call the hearing to order. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. This morning, I will be chairing the hearing. My name is Robert Hutchings. On my direct left is Ms. Linkletter. On my far left is Ms. Nesbitt. The assessor representing the City of Winnipeg Assessment and Taxation Department is Mr. Spacek. We will be hearing out, and our secretary is Ms. Falshaw. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by this Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed further to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with this board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following their swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by cross-examination by the assessor and the panel members. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions based on evidence presented today. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. And can everybody please put their cell phones on silent before we begin?
Yeah, please.
Please state your name.
Jonathan Spacek.
Do you swear the evidence you present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. You don't have to stand up. Please state your name.
Rocky Neufeld.
Do you affirm the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kara. Good morning, Mr. Neufeld. Mr. Spacek, the first property on the docket we're going to deal with is item number 5, and that is 1895 Brookside Boulevard.
Yes.
Please.
Thank you.
Does everybody have that one? Because it's kind of in the docket. Okay. When you're ready, please.
No problem. This is roll number 14100128045, also known as 1895 Brookside Boulevard. This is on the corner of Brookside and Inkster. Today we're looking at the 2017 realty hearing for this. So this is using a reference date of April 1st, 2014. There was a little background on this property. There was a part of the property that was merged, a lot was merged onto it, so that is what sent out the supplementary notice and the new value. The original property has not changed as of that time for this hearing. It's just the land, which you can see on my next picture, has been added to the property. So physically, no changes. This was heard in 2016 for the 16 and 17 at the Board of Revision. The decision was to cut the value to $4,661,000 by the Board of Revision, and it's been further taken to the Municipal Board. Just a little bit of background. The building we're looking at today has a leasable area of 50,849 square feet. It is the Peterbilt semi-trailer service shop, kind of headquarters area. I've included some pictures to give you a better view. Piecework built, 3 buildings from 2004 to 2005. We have a wall height ranging from 15 feet up to 28, where they actually work on the semis, the bigger warehouse portion. I'm also making a recommendation today to match my income approach, which you'll see in the back, but it's cutting the value from $5,219,000 to $5,032,000. That's what I will be defending today. And the workup will be later in my brief. But if you turn to page 2, you can see this overhead picture. And if you can just imagine where the roll number is, if we're all on page 2 at the top, I'll say the top left here of this picture, there was a portion of that land that was a separate roll number. So that's been added on to this whole roll number now to make this why we're here today, the new supplementary notice. You can see the second page, you can see all the bays at the bottom there where they work on the trucks, all the parking for the trucks along the outside of the building. It does have a building to land ratio of 9.47. Page 3, again, just some more outside views of the property. And page 5, I'm using the same comparables that were used for the 2016-17 hearing. These are all with the reference date before April 1st, 2014. And the way we do, this is considered a vehicle, a VCD in our eyes, a dealership. So what we always used for these comparables is similar retail stores, which in this case it's not as useful because most of our dealerships are along busier streets with these large retail shops such as Regent and Waverly West and down Portage. So this is a unique property, I'll say. A lot of my comparables aren't as useful as they would be if it was in a more higher density area for traffic and where people would be going to buy cars. So again, keep that in mind when you're looking at my comparables. My most useful comparable, which I pointed out is on page 6, is I believe 75 Ames Road. This is off the south perimeter and has large bays and works on trucks as well. It's a 5-year lease. It started January 1st, 2010, 21,720 square feet, $10.58, and it's built in the year 2000. So if you look at turn a few pages to page 9, you can see a picture of it, 75 Ames Road. It's just, I believe it's more comparable to our semi-truck, what we'll call a car dealership, as opposed to some of these other retail big box stores in this situation. So I just wanted to point that one out. And if you turn to page 10, it's our actual workup for this property. So we have the 50,849 square feet, and we're using $9.30 a square foot. This is with the vacancy of 5% standard for our VCDs, 7% expenses, and we're using an 8% cap rate. So this gives you the total value of $5,032,000, which I'm recommending, not the estimated value at the bottom. So again, if you turn to page 12, our cap rates for the 2014 reference date, or the 16 and 17 cycle, are as shown below. Since we use the neighborhood NSC, I'll say, so if you scroll down for retail, the third on the left-hand side, the third box there, retail, we have the different types of retail properties. The cap rates we're using were based on these retail big box stores that we compare to the VCDs and the areas that I said before. In this case, we're using 8%. So if you look at neighborhood NSC, the city of Winnipeg range from 7 to 10.5 for these types of buildings. For this property, we're using 8%. If you scroll across, for between our 20th and 80th percentile is between 6 and 7% we use for that cycle. So we are above that at 8. So this is again one of our outlier properties I would consider, due to the location and different type of work they're doing compared to most of our dealerships. If you look at Colliers, range between 6.25 and 6.75, 6.5 and 7 for CBRE. So we're on the high end for all of these, using these as comparisons for the capitalization rate. Again, I know this is a unique property to value as a VCD, so if you have any questions, please let me know, but that is my presentation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Spacek. Mr. Neufeld, any questions of the assessor?
Sure, yes. Have you inspected?
I have not.
And the history of the assessment, you're saying it was a merge of one roll to another roll?
From my understanding, they added the lot at the top left-hand corner to the roll.
At whose request?
I am not aware.
You're aware that so you're not aware the property owner did not request this, that the assessment department
No, I
did
didn't
this?
have anything that said you requested it or not.
And when the city made its merge of the property, and I'm referring to page 2, why didn't they merge the third roll, which is the property immediately to the east that shares the approach from Inkster?
I didn't do the replot for this one, but if I had to guess, they would probably assume this one is.
Well, you can't guess.
Yeah.
It's just you don't know.
No, I don't know.
Okay, so there was a third roll though, you are aware.
There is a third roll beside, yes.
Now, on the nature of the space that you have at 50,849, do you know what we're in agreement on plan area at 48,061. Now, do you know what the rest of the space is, what it is?
Not exactly, no.
Do you show a record of how many mezzanines you've got listed in there?
In this one, I don't.
You mentioned your comparables, they're mostly all retail.
Yes.
There isn't a single one that's located nearby the subject, is there?
There's not.
Would not then it be more appropriate to use sites that are closer to the subject to reflect the neighborhood, the trucking industry in the neighborhood?
You could make the argument to use different comparables, sure.
And your capitalization rates, page 12, you haven't brought in any actual rates here?
None.
And you mentioned that you called it an outlier. Now, to your knowledge, does the city of Winnipeg or any of the other parties reporting caps have a property like this in their study?
Not to my knowledge.
The original appeal of this for this rule, for the reference date of April 1st, 2014, I have it here. And in it, you're right, they use the same numbers, everything's the same, except they reported the sale in 2012, but you haven't reported that sale, have you?
When I run I didn't have a sale show up for this brief, and I'm assuming that's due to the new roll number, so I didn't purposely leave out a sale.
No, okay, but you are aware that the previous one indicated a sale January 17th, 2012 for $3,150,000?
I was not aware, no.
And did you take a look at the 2018 appeal?
I briefly glanced at the board revision. I did not look in depth at the 18 appeal, no.
No, but you are aware that the board revision changed that rate to, for this merged roll, to $3,566,000?
I was not aware of the exact number. It seemed, looking at it almost seemed post-reference to me. It's like.
No, and I understand.
I wasn't interested
It
in
was a
what they did for
procedural
18, no.
reason I'm asking it, not a value necessarily. But you are aware that they did reduce it, and did the city appeal that decision?
I'm not aware.
Okay, those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Lynn, any questions of the assessor?
I do just have questions about the two roles.
Okay.
Can you give me the breakdown of the two separate assessments on those roles
Previously?
previous to their merger?
I don't have the map with me. I don't have the old breakdown.
Was it just land only that was merged?
Yes, it was
Into
land
the-
only that was merged into the original building part of it.
Into the building part, and that land is used, can you just point out to me
Yeah,
again
so
where
if,
that is?
and I believe Mr. Newfeld will have a good picture as well, but if you look at mine, second page here,
Yep,
we're just gonna go this kind of top area of it here, where they have parking, like you see where all those trucks are parking above the
Yes.
building?
Yes.
That was added to the roll, and we just considered it, and we now just considered part of that roll number.
Okay.
That we didn't add any surplus land, or we're just adding, like, it's just
A
part of the
straight
roll
add
now, yeah,
and a merger.
exactly.
okay. And you said there was an appeal of the 2016 for the
This
whole
was-
piece or part
Yeah,
of it?
for the building piece, I'm sure
Just for the building piece?
Yeah, I know that the building piece, I'm sure the land was appealed to, I can't imagine it not being, but I don't know for sure. But I know the building was appealed 1617, and there was a cut from, it was originally 409, and they cut it to 4661.
Okay.
That
so-
was the 1617, and then 18, they've already heard this roll number, the new one, in 18. And there was a cut as well that Mr. Newfeld knows, I don't have the numbers with
No,
me.
that's fine. So the 4661, was that was just the building piece?
That was just the building without that northern piece of land, or it's not northern, just that piece of
And
land.
that was the municipal board that did that, or was that? the
No,
Board
and
of
then that was
Revision?
Board of Revision,
Mhm.
and then it's currently appealed by the appellant at the 2016-17.
It's going back to the municipal board?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, that's
No
my
problem.
questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Carrie, any questions?
Just a couple. Mr. Spacek, on page 10 of your brief,
Yes.
Your original 5 million too, that was model driven?
Model driven, yes.
Okay. And I'm sorry, you probably stated this, but I didn't quite catch it. You reduced it to 5 million of 32?
Yes, on page 10, the first number that works out right after the cap rate there, the 5,031,850, that's the proper model driven number. I don't, like, again, the 5219, I'm not, I'm just going right with the original model driven 532, if that makes sense.
Okay. Okay. And you said that Ames you felt was your best comparison?
I think using this older, using this list, again, looking through them, you can see all the pictures, but it seemed like the most similar building type and use as the subject property.
Where is Ames Road?
Ames Road is just off of the south perimeter. It's a little bit road rated Lage and perimeter. It's just on that strip there on the north side of the street.
Okay. And even though, let me look here on page 5, Ames is, where the heck is Ames?
It's on page 6, yeah.
Thank you.
5 down from the top.
So it is half the size of the subject.
Yes, half the
property.
size of the subject property. And it's also a 2010 lease and it was built in 2000.
Okay. Is there an accessibility issue in regards to this property?
Off of Inkster and Brookside?
Yeah.
I don't believe so. It
Okay.
has an entrance at Inkster and it has an entrance at Brookside.
Okay. I'm
And it
thinking
has,
of another.
it seems lots of room for the semi-trucks.
Okay, I'm thinking of another property then. Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Okay, Mr. Spacek, just to confirm, we're here because of supplementary assessment which added that corner land, but in your recommendation today, you're not adding any value for that additional land?
No,
You're sticking
we're
with
considering
it.
it part of the property.
Okay. And you're, so no, maybe it's irrelevant, so you're sticking with the 5,032,000, okay. That's your recommendation. Okay, I have no other questions. Mr. Neufeld, when you're ready, please.
Thank you. I do have the details of the previous assessment. I noticed that one of the members asked about what they were separately. I have copies of all of it, if you'd like to see them. There's also the last board order from 2018, so again, you look at it if you want to look at it, but if you don't want to look at it, throw it away.
I think we'll leave out the 2018, that's post-reference.
Okay, but it's stapled. So
Stapled, okay.
just ignore it then?
Okay, we'll stroke it out.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you got any problem with this being presented?
As long as we don't look at, as long as the 18's not, I'm fine with the old assessment.
Okay,
Should we just pull that out?
yeah, maybe.
Yeah, it's the first,
Or we can stroke it off. It's,
yeah, it's stapled, it's the first 3 pages.
okay, so we're gonna say that it wasn't submitted, how's that?
That's
Part of the evidence?
that's fine.
Okay, so we're gonna get rid of, 3rd page, is that right?
The
The
first
first three.
three
First.
are the 2018 order.
First. Okay.
So the difficulty with these multi-role sites is that we need to get them scheduled together. There is a reason they were separate from the beginning. Each is a lot of record. Now, the Peterbilt site itself was first developed in the late 90s, and they, at that time, they didn't own the other role, which was called 1909 Brookside, and that's the one that's listed here, this picture. And we have always preferred that they stay separate for a variety of reasons. The biggest one is that 1909 Brookside is not legally serviced, which is strange because it was the office of the developer of Inksbrook. His name was Klaus Rossler, and he ran a sewer and water company, and his site was not legally serviced. So, but he didn't need it, he's a contractor, but then he developed the rest of the sites and serviced the rest of the sites. So the land at 1909 is worth significantly less. And remember, just because the city merges the roll, that doesn't change the legal rights that's associated with the land. That's an administrative exercise. The land has to pay its service fees and has to be connected, and it is not. Which is, again, the reason it was always kept separate. It's very much just an accessory use with a marginal value. So when we brought it to appeal, and you can see the date stamp at the top, is that was heard in October of 2015, and we met with the assessor at the time, and certain assurances were made that that the main property is going to be heard 2 months later, and I'll make certain that we get it reduced from there, and that never happened. And if you go to the next order, which is the main property, 1895 Brookside, and the assessor in that particular case, I want to choose my words carefully, chose not to deal with the excess land in the same manner that we had agreed to with the first assessor. Now, I'm not making any conclusions as to their motivation, but it didn't happen. So we were very upset and we appealed. Then after this, then they merged the rolls. Now, again, it shouldn't be merged, simply because they have different legal attributes. There is common ownership, however. Now, when it was merged, we did submit our brief, and I think you have a copy of it, and the hearing was put off, and there is an error on ours. We did put in the old roll number, not the new roll number, but we do show the proper calculations. And so the first pictures I wanted to show you were on page 8 and 9. And in it we have an aerial photograph, and then beside it the assessment department breakdowns. So these are the pre-hearing values before the 2016 roll was heard, showing each separate value. And you can see that the main property at the corner with the red mark, and then the one they merged, which is the property immediately north that I told you was unserviced, and then the other property, which is immediately east, and it has a shared access, also common ownership. And these three properties do form part of the economic unit. Now, the property to the east is serviced, so fees were paid, and it is legally able to be developed. So the silliness of this all, of course, it's assessed at less than the undeveloped parcel is, but that's what happens when you can't have all your properties heard the same day. The other issues, though, that happened after this, so this first purchase was done in '97, and I do have firsthand knowledge of it because I did work for the owner back in 1997. And at the time, when they decided to put the Peterbilt dealership in, they had the two access points. Now, subsequent to that, I think it was 2007 or 8, the city came with an Inkster redevelopment project, which was fine. It was needed. It was a widening. But in the widening, they put a median lane. And so on page 8, you see the entrance into the properties from the south side. That now is only a westbound in-out. There used to be a truck turn lane in there for eastbound. That's been taken away. So now to get into this site eastbound, you've got to travel all the way to Inksbrook Boulevard, which is a block away, make a left turn down Inksbrook, and then make another left turn on I can't remember the name of the street, and then make another left turn onto Brookside Boulevard, and then another left turn into the site on the access on the west side. So eastbound traffic has been now, or you could try to make a left turn on Brookside and then come into it from there, which is actually a lot harder, because remember that these are semi-trailers, sometimes with B trains, so turning radiuses are very, very difficult. So the eastbound turn in from Inkster onto Brookside and then a right turn into from Brookside don't, especially the right turn in from Brookside doesn't have the turning radius that they need. So it is a bit of a hardship. This is trucking neighborhood. It was, the whole concept, like all the trucking industry in Winnipeg is located in this general area. Next to it is a fluid shop that does hydraulics. Beside that is a trailer and a chassis shop. Across the street is our two engine repair places, and there's 4 truck dealers in this vicinity. So the changes the city put in did give it a little bit of difficulty and devalued the land because of the lack of the in-out. And I talked about a B train. A B train is a semi-trailer with an attached trailer. And for the record, the first B train in Canada, this is according to my clients, was developed by Fort Garry Industries down the road in 1986. It claimed to fame. They decided to build one once, and it predated the B trains that were in Alberta, which was, they claimed it to be first for transferring oil. But that's just a little anecdote, but this is a trucking neighborhood. The site itself is, as I mentioned, a Peterbilt dealership, and it sells new trucks, used trucks, leases trucks, repairs trucks, and has a truck body shop. Of those functions, the dealership is the least economically strong. Most large trucking companies don't do a deal with the local dealer. They go straight to the factory and cut a deal, and then the local dealer does the service work. The amount of traffic that comes in and buys a new Peterbilt truck or a new Mack or a new Volvo is very, very low. Some years it's in single digits as to how many they actually sell. And compare that to an auto dealership who will sell 1,400 new units a year. It is a different concept altogether. Now, they do more used truck business, and of course repair is the bread and butter in this business. Warranty work and just general maintenance work. These trucks put millions of miles on them, and they have to be rebuilt very often. So this is predominantly a truck repair facility. It is an error to describe it as a dealership. It is an error to describe any truck dealership as a dealership. They exist to repair, and that's where the money is made. Which leads us to the valuation that we dealt with. Now, just before I finish that, the other physical issues is we have a disagreement on area. We agree on plan area. Now, that came from the plans that I submitted to the city after the last expansion to have a body shop. We are in agreement at 48,061 square feet. We are in agreement that there is one mezzanine that is taxable, because it actually has a separate entrance and it's been developed. A picture of it is shown on, I'm sorry, I don't have a picture of it in this brief, I have it in other briefs. It overlooks the truck base from the inside. We do believe that that is leasable square footage. What is not leasable square footage that the city has put on for every year this has been on the roll, and that's our difference of, I guess it's about 1,600 square feet. A picture of it is shown on page 4. The bottom picture on page 4 shows a wired chain link fence on top of an enclosed area. That is what the city is assessing as rentable area. Now, this is not a mezzanine. This is in fact racking that is enclosed. So a racking is to the left. You see the orange racks. They hold all the parts. That's what's enclosed here. Now the difference is in this enclosed area underneath here. These are high value parts, so they're locked up. and then the top of it is racking where they can put another layer of parts. Access to it is by forklift, and that's the forklift opening you're seeing. There is no service there except for the 3 overhead fluorescent lights that you can see in the picture. There's no water, there's no plug-ins, there's 3 lights. This is racking, and racking is not square footage. So their number is wrong, and we've been through this, we've had inspections, when we reach municipal board, sometimes we get an agreement with them on, sometimes we don't. But by definition of square footage, it's not. So as to valuation, this is not a vehicle dealership. What we look at it is it's an industrial building, a good industrial building in an industrial neighborhood. You can see that on our parameters, we actually applied the industrial rates, not dealership rates, because those should be reserved for car dealers that are located in retail areas where the secondary or uses or replacement uses are retail. The most important issue on deciding what the usage is if Peterbilt moves out tomorrow, who moves in? And we actually know who would move in because Peterbilt vacated the site across the street. It was a truck repair shop. That's who will move in, not a dealership. So on page 10, we have numerous rents, we have different sized properties, all in the general area. Well, there are a few that are outside the general area, but predominantly because this is the industrial part of the Northwest, is the industrial part of our city, our rates. And we selected the highest end of the range, and actually the highest end of the range is represented by 895 Century in my list. We did not use that because that's a retail jobbers place. That was the Home Depot's jobbers, and so there's an element of retail to it. You can go in there and shop. So we went to the second highest in our list, which was actually on Lawson. And now I found out a couple of weeks ago that that's not an arm's length deal at $625. Regardless, we are using the higher end of the industrial range at $625 on the actual square footage, industrial rates. As to capitalization, properties like this don't end up in anyone's surveys, anyone's studies, because they're not investment properties. They're always owner-occupied properties. Colliers doesn't track them, CBRE doesn't track them, and we know the city doesn't have any sales of them because there haven't been any investment sales. They're unfair to compare to investment properties. The risk levels are higher. If the trucking industry changes and the nature of it changes, which of course it did, those of you who are roughly my age will remember the oil crisis of 1973, where overnight the cost of trucking virtually killed the industry and bankrupted the largest carriers in the United States. Canada didn't face that same issue, but we did have some forced mergers later on. So it is a volatile industry. We can be replaced by rail, by air, and by couriers. On page page 12B and 13B, we have numerous capitalization rates. And we're looking at a post-reference cap rate of the Slate portfolio. Was something that we thought was worth looking at, but we do have some that are within the reference period throughout here. And Paquin capped at 847, Seal, and I'm looking at page 13B, Seal, which is a window manufacturer, an element of transferring the business over to the new tenant, 8.29. Aikens, which was actually done on for the reference date at 11%, a bit of an unusual deal. And 35 Winfield, which closed August of 14, but we manage it so we know that it was in play at the reference date, capped at 9.48. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neufeld. Mr. Spacek, any questions of the appellant?
Just a couple of quick, please. For your capitalization rate, you're asking for 8.6% today.
Yes.
On your workup on the right-hand side, you have your optimal list and your subject list, just from my understanding.
Right.
Adjusted optimal 8%, then you have subject at 8.42.
Right, yeah, one's, sorry, I totally forgot the name. One's based on numbers, one's based on analysis. Qualitative, quantitative, thank you very much. Didn't sleep much last night. So the quantitative was 8.42, qualitative is 8.6, and either number is within a close range. 8.5 is reasonable, 8.4 is reasonable. We would not make an issue on them. I just tended to like the slate sale, that's all, what can I say?
And and as you said, that's a post-reference.
Well,
cap
yeah,
rate sale.
it closed in 15. It was in play. I met with the Slate people years before then. We knew it was in play, and we don't have a definitive date on it. That's the date that they reported to Securities Commission.
All right, and, okay, so your market value of, you're working to 3.109, and then you have on your less 2533 Inkster.
Right, and now it's included in there, so disregard that.
So you're, okay, so you're, cause, okay.
And 3.109, and if you, you know, if it were capped lower at 8.5, it would come out at 3.150, which pretty much matches the sale.
Yeah, that's all my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Carrie, any questions of the appellant?
Just one quick question, on page 9 of your brief,
Yes.
I just can't quite read the number on the, up here at the top, Mr. Neufeld.
Oh,
On the unserviced
Yeah.
portion, it's very blurry.
Right. It should be, what, on my handout at 558.
Thank you, that's all my questions.
Thank you. Then any questions of the appellant?
Yeah, so that raises some questions for me. On your first page, I'm also just trying to understand the numbers. Yeah, on the box on the left-hand side, market value is 3,109,708. Is that the
Yeah,
building
just-
only portion?
Yeah, just disregard what's
Okay.
below. This was produced before we knew there was a supplemental, and it was filed, and then there was a supplemental, and then that hearing was then adjourned and carried over. So what happened is that we were lucky enough not to have to pay the appeal fee twice, but we're also bound with our evidence that we had submitted at the time. So
Okay.
very little has changed,
So-
just stroke those last three off.
Okay, I'm just still trying to understand it though. The 593 is
Is the parcel to the east,
the east.
that's the third parcel.
Oh, the third parcel.
Yeah, that's 2533 Inkster.
The one on the map that's showing 510, it looks like.
Yes.
I'm just trying to get the numbers to
Yeah,
match.
there was a small, actually, there was a small change in the value of that at the board, and
Okay.
it was at the same hearing that 1909 Brookside was heard, and after that hearing, we decided that it was fair to have a separate value for 2533 because it was serviced, and it did have some value, but not for 1909.
Okay, so then if we're dealing with the entire merged roll, we have the 3,109,708, which is just relates to the building only portion.
It relates to the two rolls that have been merged today, which is 1895 Brookside and 1909 Brookside.
Okay, so that then
And-
number is the number that's comparable to the assessor's
That's correct.
reduced
Yeah.
or recommendation for 5 million.
I didn't think I was allowed to submit new evidence, so that's why this is messy. So just stroke off those last three lines.
Okay.
And we are standing by 3109.
Okay.
And as you look, if you look above under the lot size, we do have both lots listed as being included, 7.6 acres and 2.85 acres.
Okay. All right, I was just trying to get the numbers to go. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Danny. Okay, Mr. Neufeld, I'm first of all looking at the 2016 information that was submitted by yourself. So we've got a board revision decision that reflected, didn't reflect the additional land that's being merged. Would that be correct?
Yes, that's
Okay,
right.
so the decision came in at $4,661,000?
That's correct.
Okay, and the decision says, the only thing, it seems to appear, or it appears that they accepted the assessor's NOI but changed the cap rate to 8%? Did you work it backwards?
No, I did not
Yeah.
do any calculation on it.
Okay.
We did appeal that decision because there was a pre-agreement that wasn't picked up.
Okay.
And it happens, and some days I get very upset and very mad about it, I get on my soapbox, and some days I break my leg and I'll sit and not say anything, just allude to it.
Okay, so now, sitting in front of us, so the original assessment, whether you agree with it or not, was the revised assessment was $4,661,000.
That's correct.
We've merged about 124,000 square feet of land. And the assessor's recommendation is $5,032,000, so there's a difference of $371,000 theoretically for that additional land added. That's the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I think that's roughly the math that
Yeah,
I
okay.
saw.
Okay. So you never worked it backwards. So we've got a discrepancy in the leasable area of about 1,650 square feet. Your presentation compared to the assessor. I'm gonna ask Mr. Spacek, what would your opinion be on that fenced-in area for storage? Do you have a policy on that, or?
I didn't add this to the roll or do the other inspections, but I'm okay with what I presented for the space.
Okay.
I don't have anything to say about
Okay,
change.
I'm putting you on the spot here. You
Yeah.
haven't. Okay, I was just asking if there was a policy or not considered leasable. Okay. I think that is all my questions. Well, my last question would be, did you ever work backwards for the 2016 realty? What the base rate was for the leasable area?
No, I didn't.
Okay, because we've got a difference of about $3 a square foot here, right, so. Yeah. Obviously, Mr. Neufeld didn't agree with that decision, and we've got a pending municipal board based on those differences, okay. All right, that's all my questions. Any requirement for a summary at all?
Not for
Mr. Spacek? No?
Yes, and I'm just gonna repeat what I've said. Number one, this merged land is not serviced. If you look at the pictures, it doesn't even have a legal approach. Its value is marginal. Secondly, this is not a vehicle dealership. This is a truck repair facility. You've got to look at rents in the neighborhood, industrial rents, market value, not what someone thinks the use is. The city has put an artificial parameter on it and compared it using rates derived from auto dealers. And it is certainly not an auto dealer. I guess those are the key points. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Neufeld. We'll be with us. That concludes 1895 Brookside Boulevard. And we are going to take a 5-minute recess, please. Mr. Slaughter, you'll be next.
Takes me
Okay, thanks, Kara. I will now call the hearing back to order. Next property on the docket is 1496 Regent Avenue West. Good morning, Mr. Slaughter, and we are dealing with the realty for 2018. Mr. Stasak, when you're ready, please.
Thank you.
1496.
All right, today we are looking at roll number 090104744040, also known as 1496 Regent Avenue West. We're doing the assessment for roll year 2018 this time, using a reference date of April 1st, 2016. We have a total 2018 assessment of $2,006,000. This is a Subaru dealership that was built in 2014. We have a gross floor area of 9,214 with a leasable area of 8,388 square feet. This is a land to plan ratio of 7.17. If you turn our page, I've included some pictures of the property. The first photograph on page 2 is a picture from above. You can see exactly where it is on Regent. You can see the dealership and service center is on the back portion of the lot. This is what I would consider on the smaller side for lot size for a dealership. You can see all the cars that are there. How much room they have for the cars, but that's a 7-to-1 land ratio for a dealership. You can see at the bottom of the page along Regent, the Subaru dealership, all the cars up there waiting to be bought. Page 3, again, no income and expense. We have a new building put on the roll. We don't have the information from them yet. So I have no leases or income or sales history. This is an owner-occupied building. Page 4, I'm using the comparables that are used for our car dealerships this cycle for the 2018 assessment. This is a spreadsheet put together, and for this appeal it makes more sense. We use the retail properties along Regent to compare the big box stores. What would a dealership kind of say it wasn't a dealership? What's the closest thing we can compare it to, as we don't have many, if any, arm's length leases for car dealerships. So this has been heard before, but I'm going to point out a few of the closest comparables. If you look at comparable number 15, this is 1610 Regent, the Good Life Fitness on Regent and Lash there. It's a 23,000 square foot building, so it's larger. It's going for $17 a square foot. Started October 13th with a lease until November 28. If you go all the way down to comparable 35, we have 1517 Regent Ave, which is the Ashley Furniture, 24,000 square foot building, again larger, but going for $17 a square foot. And this is a lease from 06 to 2016, 10-year lease. Comparable 37, we have Unit 10, 1580 Regent, which is the Best Buy just down the street, 33,000 square feet, 280. So again, it is a larger size square footage, going for $17. Our total weighted average across the city that many assessors were using in the cycle for BCDs works out to $16.95 for these big box retail buildings across the city. And if you could just do me a favor at the bottom there, I know there's been some what I've been told, some argument back and forth about some of these being arm's length. If you could just disregard the 3 auto dealerships at the bottom for comparables. I'm not sure, I can't say with confidence that any of them are actually arm's length anymore. So I'm just gonna cross them out, don't put any weight on them, and we could probably save ourselves a good argument there. So again, for my comparables, across the city, we're looking at 1619.5. This subject property on page 5, you can see it's a brand new dealership built in 2014. We're on the high end of our range. We're using $19.80. So this represents a brand new building on Regent, built 2014. Again, so we're at that $19.80. We have an 8,388 square foot building. We're using our standard BCD numbers here. We got a 2% vacancy, 7% expenses, $550 shortfall. We're using a 7.5% cap rate, and this works out to that $2,006,000. Just to quickly speak to page 7, we're using our 2018 cap rate sheet here, just showing the breakdown of what the city uses. We're at 7.5% for this building. I'm going to bring you down 3 major rows from office, industrial, right to retail there in the middle, and the 4th one down, neighborhood NSC, is what I would consider the closest to all the comparables I've used and what we use to determine the cap rate for this building. So you can see neighborhood NSC, the city of Winnipeg total uses between 6.75 and 9.5. And for if you're looking at the 20th percentile and the 80th percentile being taken out, we use between 7.5 to 7.75. This property is at 7.5%, being a new building with the 8,000 square feet on Regent. So the just wanted to point that out to try to give some clarification of where we stand with, at least within our internal scale of the cap rates. And that is my presentation. If there's any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Mr. Spacek. Mr. Slaughter, any questions of the assessor's evidence?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Spacek, from your description, the subject property is basically half and half. It's a dealership in the front half and almost the exact same size as the service garage in the back, is that correct?
From my understanding, yes.
And an unfinished service garage in the back.
Yes.
Yeah. The comparisons that you show on page 4, the 1 to 39, as you mentioned, these are all more retail, I guess. They range from supermarkets to retail locations to fitness centers. And they would all be 100% finished space, is that correct?
From my understanding, yeah, other than maybe warehouse space in the back could be slightly different, but I would not disagree.
And would you agree that typically in the market, all other things being equal, finished space would command a higher rent per foot than unfinished space?
Yes.
So would you agree that perhaps there should be some downward adjustment made from these comparisons to a property like the subject with half unfinished space?
It could be argued, sure.
Okay. That's all the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Slaughter. Carrie, any questions of the assessor?
Just in regards to page 4 of your brief.
Yes.
You talked about the 3 comparisons at the bottom to
Yes.
disregard. I am aware of the third one, the Frontier acquisition.
Yes.
Of what that involved. But I have not heard anything about the Boyd or the Montel detailing.
Okay. I just, again, I'm fine not speaking to them and just using my comparables above, as I'm not 100% sure. I did not clarify these 2 rents or the IMEs on these ones, so I'd rather be safe than sorry.
Okay. Would you not agree, though, using big box like Ashley, Best Buy, certainly in terms of traffic, people in terms of purchasing are gonna be making electronic purchases and furniture purchases a lot more often than a car?
Absolutely. Again, we're looking for the next best thing. I know it's not perfect. I wouldn't
Yeah.
disagree with that. We're using the best we can to find the value of a building that has no arm's length rents, like across the city, so, but I don't disagree with you, no.
Yeah, and certainly the size.
Yeah, much larger. Don't disagree.
Okay. No other questions, thank you.
Thank you. Lynn, any questions?
I just have a quick question about your model.
Yes.
This is model driven,
Yes, all
correct?
model driven.
All right, just, you have a weighted average of 16.95, 17 essentially.
Yeah.
And a 2014 to 16, this would be the previous cycle,
Yeah.
right? So you're using 1980 a foot
Yeah.
above the average.
Yes.
Can you explain why you're using a higher rate
Yeah.
than your rent comparables?
Yeah, again, like Mrs. Linklater had said, a lot of these retail sizes are much larger. Some of the rents are much older. Some of these are older buildings as well. It's all taken into account into that average. So our building is an 8,000 square foot newer building, built 2014. So, you know, you get a little bit of an upward increase in the rent due to economies of scale. And again, location of the building, I'm not sure compared to all, but that's the total weighted average. So we are on the upper end, above the average, because it's a smaller, newer building.
Okay.
Would be my argument.
Okay, thank you for that
No problem.
explanation.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. Carrie?
Yes, I'm just gonna, did you have a chance to visit these premises?
I've never been to inside this building, no.
Okay, so just in regards to your answer to Lynn, so are you suggesting because it's a 2014, that it's a newer build, it's gonna command a higher per square footage over the furniture because it's newer?
I'm trying to give a reason why it is, the model does give it a higher reason, but yes, the smaller size is a factor towards
Okay.
why it's having a higher rent.
But you did not inspect the premises?
No, I did not.
And so you can't speak at all to the finishings inside?
No, I can't speak to exactly how they finished the building, no, but a
And
newer
this
car
is a-
dealership.
Okay,
I
but
know,
it is,
yeah.
and no offense to anyone, this is a Subaru dealership. It's not the Mercedes, it's not the Audi.
For sure, yeah.
Okay, that's all my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Spacek, page 4 of your comparisons. We've got a total weighted average of 1695 in 2014 and 2016, about $1 more per square foot. Which would you rely on?
For this one,
Yeah.
this is a wide range of rents from, I mean, which one would I rely on? I think.
I'm sorry, I meant of the two calculations at the bottom, the averages? Like,
Yeah.
are you relying on the $17 or are you relying on the $18?
I'm using both, but I mean,
Okay.
weighted average is probably the best to use.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you, that's my only question. And Miss
Yes.
Kara,
Sorry about
swearing
this.
Mr. Slaughter.
Questions?
Please state your name.
Rod Slaughter.
Do you swear the evidence you present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Kara. Thanks, Mr. Slaughter.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I just had a bit of rebuttal evidence. I don't know if it's completely necessary. I think Mr. Spacek had mentioned that he had some concern about one of the leases, but just for the board's clarification, I didn't have a concern with actually two of the leases at the bottom of Mr. Spacek's page 4, but the third is the Frontier. And what this rebuttal shows is clearly it's an internal lease, Frontier acquisition. Also in that package, though, is, and I think this is interesting, what the city had used to assess that property for an April 16 market rent is $13.53 a square foot. That's consistent with the realty assessment and the business assessment. So certainly the city didn't consider the rent to be market, but also I think it's interesting what they did apply.
Okay.
For what it's worth.
Mr. Spacek, any questions on?
None.
Okay. Lynn, any questions on the rebuttal? Carrie? Okay, and I have no questions either. Mr. Slaughter, when you're ready, please.
Thank you. So we have the main brief then that I would have submitted 2 weeks ago. And Mr. Spacek's done a very good description of the property. So again, we have a picture on page 2 and a site map on page 3. I did have a chance to visit the property after I submitted the evidence and basically verified what seems pretty apparent even from these pictures. It's the dealership in the front, so there's some offices in the showroom for the Subaru cars. And in the back, almost the exact same size, is unfinished service garage. And the land to building ratio is 7.27 to 1. That's not a bad ratio, but because the building is smaller, I agree with Mr. Spacek's comment that this lot at 60,000 feet is relatively small for a dealership. So we've gone through the income approach as well, and I empathize with the assessor. It is tough to find great comparisons with these type of properties. There are some, but many times the rents will be internal in nature and they can't really be relied upon. So I don't disagree with the approach taken by the city when you're trying to look at what the appropriate market rent is, to maybe look outside of dealerships for other properties that may have other features that are somewhat similar. But I would caution that I do believe that it is apparent in the market that finished space will command a higher rent, and therefore if we look at things like Best Buys or Michaels or Good Life Gyms or any of those kind of things that are 100% finished space with HVAC throughout, I do think that it would be a prudent adjustment to factor some downward adjustment for the fact that the subject only has half the space being finished. So what we've done is look at a combination of properties, and you'll see on page 6 there's 18 comparisons. First 9 comparisons are vehicle service related. So typically these will be not great comparisons for the property as a whole, but decent comparisons for the service part of the subject property. And they average $13.47 a square foot. Then the next 7 comparisons, so numbers 7 through 17, are like Mr. Spacek's comparisons. They're retail, but they're all specifically right on the retail or the Regent Strip here, like the subject is, and they're closer in size. And we see that, of course, the rents then become a little higher because this is 100% finish. These average $15.13 a square foot. The last comparison is the one that I think is the best comparison, and that is a new auto dealer in the Waverly Auto Mall on the east side of Waverly. And it's 15,000 square feet, and the actual lease in place is $13.94 a square foot. It has just under a 10-to-1 land-to-building ratio. I have photographs of that comparison, as well as one of the better retail comparisons on page 11. And so when we look at those two comparisons, and certainly looking at the overall average, I think that the city might be a little aggressive when taking into account in their set of comparisons things like supermarkets and just what I feel to be superior properties. This range seems to be hovering closer to the $14 a square foot mark. And again, that's basically what the comparable dealership is leasing for at the Waverly West location. I would feel comfortable applying something around $14. And to be frank, in investigating many dealerships, I don't think I found anything that was assessed higher than 14. I know we're not supposed to look at assessments, but you don't find much higher than that. But I did make an adjustment upwards for two reasons. One, this is newer than some of my comparisons. This is built in 2014, and it is smaller. So for those two reasons, I've applied something higher than the 14 and went to $16 a square foot. Again, this, in my experience, would be the highest per square foot rate that I've seen for a dealership. Otherwise, Mr. Chairman, we have no contentions with the vacancy allowance, shortfall rate, or the capitalization rate. So simply adjusting the market rent to $16 would bring the value to $1,619,000. Otherwise, in evidence, I just have the supporting documentation about the assessment, subject assessment. On the very last few pages, I do have the workups for my comparison at Waverly West. We can see that the city doesn't disagree necessarily with that actual rent as being close to market. They applied $13.22 in that case. And then some other dealerships, again, I know the board doesn't like to look at other rents, but just to corroborate my statement that I don't find anything higher than $14 a square foot typically for an assessed rent. And that completes our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Slaughter. Mr. Spacek, any questions of the appellant?
I have no questions.
Thank you. Lynn, any questions of the appellant?
I have no questions.
Thank you. Carrie?
Mr. Slaughter, did you state at the beginning of your presentation that you did have a visit to
Yes.
the subject property?
It was after I submitted the evidence, but
Right.
it went out, it was last Tuesday evening.
Okay. Can you speak to the finishings in the building?
They're pretty standard. I mean, it's nice because it's newer, but I was at the Audi dealership last week as well. That's night and day.
Yeah.
Night and day.
Right.
This is very similar to certainly the one I mentioned in the Waverly West,
Right.
and the one that we mentioned, the other Subaru dealership on Pembina. That's a non-arm's length lease. Very similar to those.
Thank you, that's all my questions.
Thank you. And I have no questions either. Any requirement for summary?
Not for me, thank you.
Mr. Slaughter? Thank you very much. That concludes 1496 Region Avenue West, the realty appeal. And the next one on the docket is going to be 1496 Region Avenue West, and we're going to deal with the business assessment for 2018. Mr. Spacek, when you are ready, please.
Thank you. So this is the exact same property as before, 1496 Region Avenue West. We're now looking at the business assessment of business ID 51005. We have a total ARV of 185,820 based on that same 8,388 square feet. And this is an overall ARV of 2215. So that is our $19.80 that we just heard for the realty, plus the $2.35 for the occupancy cost. So I'm asking to maintain the 2018 business assessment, and if it's all right with everyone, I'm using the exact same argument as the realty for the rent. It's all fresh in our minds. If we're okay, I'm okay to have that as my presentation.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Slaughter, any questions?
No questions.
Thank you. Carrie, any questions of the assessor?
No questions,
Thank you. And Lynn, any questions?
No questions.
And I have no questions either. Thank you, Mr. Slaughter. When you're ready, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, similar to the assessor, our evidence would remain exactly the same on the market rate component. We have no contention with the utility rates. I would like to point out that for the business assessment, the charter, the language of the charter, sections 318, subsection 2 and 3, do allow for a component of equity. So I think that the board's statement that other assessments shouldn't be considered, I would take that with some caution when we're looking at business assessments. Simply because, as I mentioned, the charter does seem to allow for some equity in their language in saying 318 subsection 3, in determining the annual rental value of the premises, the city assessor is not bound to determine the amount of the rent that the premises would probably earn in any year, but may fix that value in any reasonable manner that is fair and just to all other owners or occupiers of premises. This follows subsection 2, where they talk about the city assessor must take all factors into account so that as far as possible, premises similar in size, suitability, advantage of location, and the like are equally assessed at a fair rental value, based in general on the rents being paid for similar premises. So in our mind, that does allow for a bit of consideration to equity. And I mentioned in the realty assessment that I don't find anything over $14, and I included some examples in the realty assessment. So I just think that kind of adds a little bit more to the business assessment argument. Our conclusion is the same though. We asked for $16 a square foot, no contention to the utilities, so that would bring the annual rental value to $153,920. And that concludes our presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Slaughter. Mr. Spacek, any questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Okay. Sorry. Carrie, any questions?
I just have one out of curiosity, the garage portion is all air conditioned, the surface area?
I don't believe so, not from what I saw. The front dealership would be,
Yeah.
but I don't believe the back was. I'm sorry, Ms. Linklater, I'm trying to, actually, let me take a look on my phone here, at one of the pictures. I really can't answer. In my experience, I didn't think it would. I thought it would have
Yeah,
gas-fired
that's
heaters.
what's come before us at the board, I have never seen air conditioning. So
Yeah,
just-
no.
it's on the-
Oh, I see why you're asking, because of the utilities, yeah, and that's a great
Yeah.
point. I actually missed that. Because I would have typically argued it should only be half of that area. I apologize, but I'll leave my presentation the same.
That's all my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Slaughter, would you like to give us a revised amount for the air conditioning?
Sure, if I'm allowed to do so, that's great.
Might as well get the request accurate.
Well, actually, it's pretty easy. I can just cut that in half, so we'd be
Yeah.
deducting 1,340 thereabouts. So the revised annual rent value, Mr. Chairman, would be 152,580. I'm not sure how the city would round that, so maybe 152,600.
152,580.
It divides up.
It does, okay. It does too. 152,580 is divisible by 12.
Oh, okay, good.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Spacek, any questions of the appellant?
I have no questions.
Thank you. Carrie, any questions?
Oh, thank you. That's-
No questions.
Okay. And I have no questions either. Any requirement for summary at all?
Not for me, thank you.
Okay.
No, thank you.
Mr. Slaughter, okay, good, thank you very much. That
Thank you.
concludes 1496 Regent Avenue, the business assessment, and that concludes the hearing today.